Good morning and welcome to the Women in Leadership Body, Mind, Soul, and Business podcast. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Amanda. Together, we are working to connect women in leadership and business to build relationships and empower each other, improving the health and wellness of the community, body, mind, and soul, sharing the heart and soul of who we are and what we do.
Today's guest is a literal genius. She's a senior aerospace engineer. She speaks several languages, including Sanskrit, and she loves to help activate women professionals with help them alleviate pain from activity, achieve their fitness goals so that they can be happy and enjoy their lives. Please welcome to the table for her first time with us, Dr. Hema Murty.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here.
Dr. Hema, we are interested in what you do and why you do it, because you have done so many great, wonderful things. What brought you to where you're at now, and what exactly is that?
Thanks for that question. I saw a chasm between regular traditional fitness training, in air quotes, you can call it that, and a demographic of people, women over 50, well, women in general, but then I niched down into women over 50 because I saw that they were the underserved and could get away with less and needed to have the attention, and that was not given to them by the traditional fitness training systems or any other system for that matter. But let's just isolate the fitness training world because that's one place where I knew I could make a difference. So I started with the attitude that, many things, as you pointed out, many things got baked into that recipe of my training style. One is my yoga background of traditional yoga philosophy in India and yoga mindset, and how that was misinterpreted in several arenas over here. So I kind of combined that yoga mindset, yoga philosophy with traditional Western, in air quotes, styled fitness training, and said, okay, well, I'm going to service at the beginning, I just said the female market, the women, professional women market, because then again, that market was so strapped for time and very stressed. And I felt that the traditional modalities of just going to a regular gym, hiring a trainer, or even just doing regular fitness classes was not serving them. And there was a lot of misinformation from the public, in terms of how you can get information on fitness. What was the normal modality people go to get information? Well, they'll, rely on a person who's in the industry, like a trainer or an instructor, or they'll go to some icon, professional fitness or professional icon. And all of that information was not serving the community, and B, some of it was actually not helping, demanding time that was not available to that demographic, was not serving their lifestyle. So that's how I started my business way back when, around 2005, so more than 15 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And trying to gather together what is it that they needed and produce a package, kind of like I said, a recipe, bake a recipe together that would produce a package, a service package that would address their specific needs. And I made it so that it was time sensitive, in terms of sensitive to their time constraints, and also headed more in the stress reduction department, made it answer a lot of their issues with time, basically, like nutrition or fitness or stress were all time oriented. The solutions were time oriented, mm-hmm. and made it work for them. So that was the demographic I served. And as you said, I baked into it my knowledge of yoga philosophy as a mindset approach, and made it work for that demographic. That's how I got into it. But, as you mentioned, an aerospace engineering background, my first take on the whole fitness equation when I first started, for myself included, was that this is a system engineering problem. And people are approaching this in the FAD approach rather than a problem-solving approach. The industry at that time, like in the 90s, even 80s, 90s, when we saw the big fitness boom of icons on television or books, videotapes, and in those days it was a videotape or a cassette tape, whatever the media was at that time originally. The icon, yeah, go into the museum now for those, but the dinosaurs walking around with VHS tapes. Now, the thing is that, the media was supplying them with information that was of a popular nature, like what sells, but not really solving the problem for that demographic. And I think that's to a certain degree, that's less now. The more the problem solving and the mindset is becoming a thing now, which is great. Applaud that. But until I think the 1990s and even into mid 1990s, there was still this fad approach of, what sells, what's the latest gimmick, what's the thing you can buy. It was a very consumer oriented system and popular oriented system rather than problem solving. So engineering is a problem solving discipline. The word engineer is ingénieur in French, which means a person who's ingenious, who comes up with a problem, with a solution to a problem. Problem solving becomes, your habit, your first go-to for any situation. So in doing that, I took the whole fitness thing and I said that equation, I wanted to solve it for myself, really, as a professional woman who's doing some, heavy duty juggling of balls in the air. You want to, address all of those issues. You've got, your career, you've got self-care, you've got family, and, and all of that. So you want to address all the issues in your sphere to make sure you're doing a good job of all the things you're attending to. And at the same time, the public wasn't being fed the correct information. So if you looked at it from a system point of view and as an engineering point of view, I could see that all of the public information was incorrect. So I decided on my own, I'm going to get the knowledge, first of all, knowledge base of fitness, the human anatomy, kinematics, kinesiology, all that stuff, try to get all that solid. And nutrition went into that mix. And the stress management I took from the yoga side of my education, which I have a master's degree in yoga philosophy, and Sanskrit, as you pointed out. So I took all of that and put together a kind of a original brand of my services called Shanti Consulting and Shanti Fitness. So I started doing that, kind of individually, one-on-one with a lot of women that I knew at that time, and just grew from there. And then the opportunity to present yoga in a class environment came up locally. And I said, well, this is what I want to do. Is one of my mission, my goal is to introduce yoga to the Western world in its original format, rather than it's kind of took on us other life and other meaning. I wanted to reintroduce it and reteach it in that proper format. And lo and behold, that took off. So I knew I was doing something right. And so signs were good that people were accepting that, not saying, what is this? This isn't even yoga, I'm walking out. That didn't happen. So I was glad that it created a following of people who wanted that. And in fact, 99, or I would say about almost all, but maybe one or two, of all the participants in my classes are people who originally said they hate yoga, and air quotes, because it wasn't really yoga what they were learning. They were learning something else and it didn't help them. Clearly, if it doesn't help you, you tend to not like it. So I think that population somehow parachuted into the class accidentally and liked it, realized it made a difference. They could suddenly improve their way of life. Their quality of life was being improved. So they saw that how the rubber's hitting the road, so to speak, and kept coming. And now they're glued. Some of them brought their husbands into the class, which is unusual for yoga classes. In that now it's not, but at the time, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it was uncommon for men to attend, or in that population, that percentage wise, it was mostly maybe one straggler or two was brave enough to be in a class with mostly women participants. So I think that's the shift that I saw, that things were working and things were clearly being utilized in the way that I meant it to be, and that education was helping them, the presentation was helping them, and the service was helping them. So that's in a nutshell, I think, your answer to your question.
It's like it's all inclusive, and I love that you come from that scientific background, because there are people out there that need those scientific facts of why should I do this? Why is
exactly
this particular posture supposed to be like this, the alignment and everything else.
Yeah.
And if they can understand the
Yeah.
arches and angles and things like that, and
Yeah.
along with that mindfulness, it really packages it up really nicely. And I love that you can also look at it with that softer perspective as well,
Right. And just speaking to that science, just to interject there, because that was a very good point. It also ramifies into the non-traditional, where you're coming from that yoga background. I understand that. But even in the traditional fitness setting, like, the Arnold Schwarzenegger type of fitness brute force setting, that science was missing when it got translated. I mean, that trajectory of the Olympic style training, the science was there. The participants were fully aware of that. They understood it. They went that route. But when that got translated to the quote unquote common person who's not training for the Olympics, but wants to be healthy and fit in their world, like the version of yourself that could be healthier so you can serve the world around you and yourself, that version, that information wasn't being translated correctly. So the science, you point out very accurately, was missing the why. So when you don't have the why, it rankles you, and then you go, I don't need an extra thing in my day. It's full, overfull, and I, just don't need to. Why am I doing this? So unless that explanation is supplied, that what is, and I think women demographic, the question that went through every person's head at that time in that demographic was, what is the minimum amount of fitness stuff I need to do?
Yes.
What can I get away with?
Yeah.
Because I got laundry and stuff. So, and I got a report to write for work, and my boss is on the phone. So, what's the minimum thing you do that I need to do to get through my week?
Because mama ain't got time.
You got that right. Yeah, exactly. Mama ain't got time. Yeah, that's right, exactly. So, I think that question I felt was not being answered by anyone, and because they were trying to promote, it was a promotion industry, even is now, but there's a little more understanding of mindset and empathy, as you aptly said. There's that empathic aspect to the fitness industry now, more so because they realized if we don't do it, they're going to be, tossed out with the garbage. So I think that is an important aspect of why I started that business, because I wasn't coming from the traditional fitness industry trained from the get-go. I had that engineering mindset, which was problem solving. You got an issue, what's the least amount of energy and least amount of stuff you would need to do to get through? And I wanted to present that to my clients. Don't need to go.
You don't need the whole Rube Goldberg machine, right? To get to the goal. That's the shortcut.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. Just want to get through that. And there was a lot of scenarios were presented to people at that time, and even now, not to cut any modality off at all sources of information and fitness training are excellent for certain populations. So they all need to be there, and they're all good for someone. But if you consider the lowest common denominator of the kind of the description we just gave of that demographic, there was that choice. Can I train at home and just save time, or do I need to shell out money and time to to go to this gym format? Now, there is a lot of pluses and minuses of both, and we know that. We can go into that. Everybody is well aware of both of that, all of that.
Well, my next question was going to be, what does it look like to work for you? So it's leading right into that.
Oh, I just segued right in.
You're like me. Funny. You just kind of do your thing, and like, this is what we're going to do, guys. I just insert myself. You just insert yourself right into that question. I love it.
Perfect.
Got it. Yeah, I know. It's so funny. I think we're in sync. Some mental, pathways are opening here. So for me, from the get-go, as I said, I wanted to meet women one-on-one in their home, because I felt like I wanted to provide them with a solution that they would have the option. It wasn't like they had to do anything. I never laid it out like that. I always said, you know about going out, going to a gym, doing that route. That's like common knowledge to everyone. You've got those. And there's many avenues of gym formats at the time, not maybe now, but there's all these shorter, smaller boutique gyms and 90-minute workouts and blah, blah, blah. So those are all open and everyone knows that. But I wanted to present another avenue in case that would help them better. And that is an at-home workout. And the fact that they didn't need to see me continuously or a trainer of any sort continuously, that they could be trained to train themselves. But what they might be missing is accountability and maybe the fastest route to get to where they need to be. And the third prong of that was injuries or limitations of whatever, either from many sources, as you pointed out, many other kinds of people have different issues from birth. There's some issues from accidents. There's some issues from environment, so many. So the other formats were not addressing those. And I wanted to be the one to say, I'm listening to, I'm here. Here's your workout with your name on it and no one else. It's not cookie cutter. I made it for you because I've seen you operate. I've assessed you. I've figured out what I computed in my brain, what works for you. It's not going to be your neighbor. It's not going to be your best buddies. It's yours. So you do it. And what's the minimum amount of things, this is how many kind of equipment pieces you would need to get away with. These are the options to add on. You don't have to, figure out what your budget is and go for it. And then I would show them the workout. And then I would say, I'm here for you. You can phone me, you can, do emails. We can do whatever. If you need a video, an extra video, I can video tape myself. I can answer it. I can supply you with that accountability and a go-to person because I figured out the golden principle is that women just want to have someone in their world to say, I'm here for you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm speaking to the choir. So, and say, I'm here for you. And also just to bounce off an idea or two saying, am I doing this right? Or, hey, I've got this event to go to. Can I just, fill in the blank? And if there's someone in the loop that can say, who's knowledgeable, who they have faith in, and you can supply them with that answer to the extent that will make them feel like they're not shortcutting themselves, that they're giving themselves the due, then I think you've done your job. And that was my kind of raison d'etre. I wanted to be that person who's went and had women clients who I would train in their home for one, I'm coming to you, I'm going to do the thing in your house, and I'm going to show you how you can get away with the least amount of stuff, keep yourself healthy, get out of pain, no more excuses, and away you go. And I'll be that person for you for as long as you want. And then if you want to go on your own solo, come back when you feel like you need me again. I'm not going to tie people down and have that issue going through their brains. That doesn't need to happen.
Right.
So
nobody needs a bully, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that you said that it was customizable to that person and that you brought it to them. Because for me personally, like if you think of the traditional way, like you said, going to the gym and getting the membership and doing all of the things that we all know about that way, I always have this intent in my head, like, and my husband and I are the same way where we say like, oh, we need to eat healthier. Okay, so I buy healthier foods. That's easy enough to do as long as the account allows that. And then, right, because healthy foods are just more expensive. It's just the reality. But then we're like, oh, should we go to the gym? How's that going to look for our day? Like, how are we going to make that work, right? And then we just never do it because we're like, we don't have time for that. We don't, whatever. And for me being, and I don't know if he's as self-conscious about it as I am, but being a woman, I'm like, I gotta lose like 40 pounds before I can even go to that gym. like,
Right.
I'm like, because in my head, and I will tell you, I have never one time stepped foot in an actual gym besides my high school gym.
Right.
And I was in high school because I had to, because I needed the credit, right? So I love that it was customizable and that you brought it to the person, because people forget that what is good for Charlie or what's good for Heather may not be good for me.
I know.
There's so many, and I love that you used the description cookie cutter, because I have done so many cookie cutter weight loss whatevers. And I'm like, well, if they lost, 37 pounds, then dang it, so can I. Well, guess what? They don't have the same makeup that I do. So guess
No.
what? It didn't work.
They don't have your
And
mind.
then
or
I
brain
was
or- yeah.
I was fit to be tied.
Right. And a lot of this stuff is really expensive and things like that. So you talked about it fitting into their budget, like how much can they do with you and what fits
Yeah.
into their budget, because I feel
Exactly.
like that is also a really important piece,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
that is a big barrier for us as women, is we don't like spending money on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like to shop, we like stuff, but we don't like to invest in ourselves in a way that
Right.
we necessarily should, or
Yeah.
Right.
in a way
Totally
that's
agree.
long-term beneficial. We like instant gratification.
Unless
Yeah,
it's
the
coffee, because I
individual-
feel like coffee gratifies everybody. Because if I have coffee, I'm a lot better of a person.
Thumbs up for that. You have to figure out what works for you. You're
Right.
absolutely right. The cookie cutter approach, doesn't work. But in the world of Google, so that goes right into more current time frames. In the world of Google, you can Google anything. What's the workout for
Mhm.
me? What's the diet for me? Which I dislike the word diet, but it's the thing is, it becomes a way of life is what you can sustain.
Yes.
So, when you were saying just a second ago that, you wanted to, not you specifically, but one wants to, wanted to drop this much weight or something like
Sure.
that. And then, the go-to answer would be, I'm just going through the logic here, the go-to answer to people who have that issue, let's say that's the issue, then the go-to answer is, I'm going to join a gym. That's a huge amount of investment, but somehow that seems to solve the problem in their mind. They haven't set foot, as you point out. They may not have set foot, but putting the money down somehow solves the problem. And lo and behold, it's still there, right? So that equation wasn't getting, and the more that equation wasn't solving the problem, and yet it should, that goes in here, and then the stress, and then there's this spiral nosedive. So from the get-go, when a solution doesn't solve the problem, it creates that you might as well have a tidal wave in your mind, because every day you're going to go, gym no, gym no, gym no, put the money down, no, but I can't go, no, and that, so you get up with this kind of tornado in here.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're cut down to half your size of performance. If you were your own boss, you did a performance review, it's like, oh my God, you need time out. Time out.
I love that.
So that's another talent that I tried to get, was I was trying to get these abilities to that was one of my things, because I'm on the receiving end, mind you. I started this company because I had to train myself, just wanted to know what's the answer. No one's giving me the answer, just hunting and trying to find the logic and the science behind all of this, and put all of that together so I can put out a package. So you poor guys, we're underserviced. Here's the solution. And so when you said that, I realized that the problem is not the problem that the woman thinks it is. So for example, let me explain what that meant. If the woman gets up in the morning and says, oh my God, what you just said, like everyone says it, oh my God, I gotta drop 10 pounds, or I can't service, my kids, my grandkids, whatever the case may be. I can't go to work, and do the things. I can't go to parties. I can't fit into my clothes, all that, blah, 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 and it goes on. And that's it's a script. It's like a movie that plays in your mind for the time, poor dears. Now stop. So first thing is I tried to put a kibosh on it. How? Because I started doing some what is called traditional yoga therapy. And these are tools that have been in existence for thousands of years. And what it is understand yourself. And I know in your show, you say this a lot, and I've heard it, and that's why we speak the same language. So the problem is not the weight. Never, unless there's a medical issue. And let's put those people in a different bucket.
Sure.
Like that's a totally different problem to solve. They have to solve that with their doctor and medical people. Let's talk about the people just like the 5 or 10 that we always talk about, that we're saying we want to present ourselves. That's not the problem. The problem is, how does the woman feel about themselves? So I started doing, along with my fitness, external weight training, or maybe yoga or stretching or whatever it is they need to have, or rehab in most cases also had to happen. I started doing yoga therapy techniques, which help them to understand. And these are exercises that I studied from yoga therapy, which help the person understand who they are, where they want to go, and how they think they want to get there. And then this kind of stuff, this movie that plays, gets kiboshed and puts in the garbage, out the door and out on the curb, because that has to stop. The reason why you do something has to be absolutely clear. Like the other day, I was leading a group. I do have small groups on the internet, which I kind of teach every so often, some of the stuff you're talking about, the Yoga Sutras and so on. And one of them, participants, was saying, okay, what I talked about goals and goal setting and relating that to the yoga therapy setting. I'm trying to understand what is the underlying cause of what you want. So for example, one guy threw out that, okay, maybe they want to be a CEO. Okay, so you want to be a CEO. Okay, that's not what you want. What do you really want? And you'd go through that. You go through about 5 times until you find the underlying cause. He just wants to be happy in his own, have more freedom, because he thinks freedom will give him happiness. So ultimately, we boiled it down to, has nothing to do with being a CEO. I just thought that was the go-to answer. So ultimately boiled down to, I want to understand myself. While the guy said, I feel like my happiness would come from more freedom. Well, there's a million other ways you could feel that same happiness. So that's one solution. Figure out a path to the CEO process of your own company and be independent. But there's like 100 other ways that could also happen, and you could still feed back into that, as long as you had that conversation with yourself.
And all this plays right into our sutra topic of the week, which is obstacles that distract.
Which I've been very vocal about saying, this is no bueno on Amanda. I am not digging this week's topic at all.
Right. So we find that as we talk about these things, we're like, oh yeah, these are all just distractions, things that are distracting me from what my true goal is. And so the fact that you work with your clients to work through those obstacles that are distracting them is absolutely incredible. It's taking the yoga teachings to the next level and teaching them how to use those tools for themselves. And I think that's
and I just want to interrupt for 1 second. Sorry about that, but I wanted to say that the Yoga Sutras are meant to be lived, and writing wasn't in existence at the time the Yoga Sutras were developed, and so they were living principles first, and then they were dumbed down to being written down for us.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And earlier you were talking about men coming to yoga classes and things like that, and I was like, but way back in the day, wasn't yoga like designed by the men?
Okay, let's start there. That's a good segue right in, right? Okay, so a little brief history of time, Stephen Hawking. So brief history of yoga, Hema Murty. Okay, so here we go. Many thousands of years ago, then, talking 10,000 or so years ago or so, beginning of time, there were beings of people on the planet who lived in the Himalayas. And we wouldn't quite call them human. We would call them something between a human and a human 3.0 or a human 10.0. Very evolved, and if I went into what does evolved mean, I'll be a whole other podcast. So let's not go there. Let's just leave that to the imagination. Just let's say they were further along the evolutionary plan than most of us here sitting here. So these beings had a human body, and their existence hung on what we would now call meditation or dhyanam. In Sanskritam, it's called dhyanam. So they were dhyana. They lived and breathed it. Only their body was human, and so it had to be, as a physical, materialistic body, it had to be attended to. So there were requirements for the physical body, food, air, water. And if a body is still for too long, it will solidify, that. So it required intermittent movement without stopping the flow of the dhyana. So they created yoga asana so that their body could move. In the Himalayas was one place where they lived on the top, in the Mount Everest is what is now called, but it's the Himalayas. So the Himalayas were a very, isolated place, still are, and some less now. And they were doing the dhyanam, and they had to keep the body alive, so that they created yoga asanas to intermittently not stop the flow of the dhyanam, but keep the body from not, that's the raft, that's the boat on which they were traveling. So the boat has to be kept healthy. So they started these yoga asanas. So that came down to those principles. Of course, nothing is written at that time. It came down from the guru to the student, from the teacher to the student, and traveled down those teachings, those enlightened observations that they experienced through the dhyana process were given to their students, and students, and so on to us. At some point, Patanjali came into the mix and wrote down some codified number of shlokas for us to understand, called them sutras. Now, a sutra is different from a shloka, but that's a minor point. The thing is that they're all tied together. Why is that important here? Why I'm making it a statement here is because a sutra implies that it's, if I would take the example of a necklace, like a pearl necklace, so there are pearls on a string. In other words, they have to be taken in unison for the effectiveness of the yoga principles to be making a change in the human being. So they were, after a while, they were written down by student, and all turned in different orders, by the way. The current version of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras that you have now were not the original version. They were kind of mismatched by students along the way for good reason. I mean, I understand it's not important here to discuss. It's just that may not have been the original order. But all to say is that the Western world was in this fitness kick at that point when yoga came over the pond and took root here. Not to say that there's some serious people. There are many serious people who tried to teach that in its original kind of way, but they catered it to the audience that was receiving it. If you start from where you would start for an Indian person in India who was learning it, teacher, student, you would not teach it that same way, just because you don't have the cultural background, the baggage that came up back to the front with it that you would need to understand it in its original form. So it kind of distilled it to the yoga asana. You can understand physical stuff. You guys got fitness over here. You do stretching and stuff like that. From where did that come from? That vector came from the Russians. And there, like we have Romanian deadlift, Bulgarian split squats, Pavlov presses. These are all from the Russian Olympic School of Fitness Training. So that came over here. That also got, don't talk to them about that, because that also got modified. Well, it has to. Your audience is different. I don't blame them, but it just happened, So, so then the asana portion, let's say you guys understand the physical part. Let's just take the sliver out, this one book out of the million books. Take the sliver out. We'll teach you how the physical portion works, and hopefully you think maybe you'll understand the rest somehow by osmosis. That never happened. So the physical thing took a life of its own and started to become yoga. It's not yoga. It's actually a percentage of the asana, because asana is more than just the physical body.
Mhm.
That's maybe what you're seeing with the eyes from the outside. But, it's like the example I always give of people. When you walk into your house and you see when your family members on the couch with
Mhm.
eyes closed, there's 100 different things that person could be doing. But you're seeing the eyes closed, and then you assume, hey, my brother's sleeping on the couch. Hey, how many times did I tell you not to sleep on the couch? But there's 100 different things that person, you could run with that, but you've assumed.
That's
So
why
just
my
like that.
father-in-law always says, I'm not sleeping. I'm just resting my eyes.
Right?
Dang it. He
Or-
was just resting his eyes.
My dad, the minute you touch the remote, right?
Don't change it.
I'm watching that.
Yeah.
You were just snoring, but okay.
You
Right?
see?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what I've learned the most?
whole
Oh,
yoga.
sorry.
No. So basically, the yoga. I'm just going to sum up what I was saying.
Yeah.
The whole yoga theory, which is what it is, stems on this one principle: what you see is not reality.
Mhm.
And so don't assume, and go from there, and then start your nose diving into your own little where you're going to go with this, because that's going to reflect back on your own
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
So just
Yeah.
finishing up that thought process.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have actually had to seek deeper knowledge within the Yoga Sutras in order to understand it at different levels. So I actually have about 7 different yoga books over there on the bookshelf. I'm looking that have the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, but translated by different authors. Everybody has a slightly different perspective, and I learned just a little bit more with every single little bit. So Dr. Hema, I'm really looking forward to continuing learning and educating myself some more through you, and we certainly appreciate you joining us on our podcast today.
Yeah, this has been so cool.
Yeah,
I think the biggest thing I've learned, because I am not familiar with yoga,
Mhm.
basically at all. I did yoga 3 times in my living room from YouTube.
The Western style.
The Western style. What I know to be yoga, right? And my daughter saw me do it one day, and so now she says that she does yoga, air quote, right? And really, it's tumbling. It's the cutest thing you've ever seen. But what I think I learned, the biggest thing from today is yoga is, and correct me please if I'm wrong, yoga is not about the physical fitness or exercise, if you will,
right.
as much as it is about the mental aspect of
The mental, spiritual.
the mental
emotional.
spiritual, because once you're in that mental spiritual, whatever religion you are, right, you live that out throughout your day.
Right.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, yoga is the word, the embodiment of living your life in this way of being conscious of how you are presenting yourself physically, but also more so mentally. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one way of saying it. I would sum it up even more simply. Your first statement was exactly correct. Yoga is not about the body, it's about the mind.
Mhm.
An end of story, because your mind governs everything. And that's the theory of yoga, actually, in original sense, is that since your mind controls everything, you
Mhm.
have control over your life and everything you experience, because you have control over your mind. And you should, as a responsible person holding the mind, you better be better understand how that all works. You're driving a car, you're driving a Maserati, you better quickly understand where everything is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Dr. Hema said I was right. Did you hear that part?
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna skip our meditation today simply because we are out of time, you guys. But this conversation so good.
Yeah.
We would love to continue this conversation. We'd love to have Dr. Hema back again with us, which we will talk details here soon. Our one of our quotes this week is, opportunities to find deeper powers within ourselves comes when life seems most challenging. Joseph Campbell. And upcoming events, Mindset Mondays around lunchtime, 11:30 Pacific on our Facebook page, and then our live podcast Tuesdays at 4 p.m. and 10 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays, or 9 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays. So take good care of yourselves this week, you guys. Take a few breaths. Notice those obstacles that are distracting you, and I just hope you guys have a fabulous, fabulous rest of the week. We have a new website. I'd love for you guys to go check it out. It's Women in Leadership, BSMB.com. Stop by, check it out, say hello. And our cause of the quarter this quarter is now networking. They help support women who have faced adversity. They mentor them and support them through high school and college and into their chosen career fields. And they have a gala March 31st. Get your tickets. Thank you, Dr. Hema, again for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. And listeners, we thank you also. We are looking forward to continuing to connect and build more relationships with more community leaders. We're building a bigger table. Come and join us. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Namaste.
Namaste.